Good evening, everybody, and once again, welcome to SOAS Entrepreneurship series. I have here with me Mr. Vinod of MoneySmart, and we're here to share some of his wisdom as well as experiences during his entrepreneurship journey. So, Mr. Vinod, could you tell me about more about what you've done with MoneySmart, how you started off, and how is it now?
Sure. So I started MoneySmart back in 2009. And back then we started off comparing home loans, and the big problem then was banks were not very transparent about what they were offering to clients. And as an average consumer, you would have to go bank to bank and try and beg for rates to be able to just know what the various banks are offering. And I thought to myself, this is something that it's not transparent, and there's an opportunity to bring transparency to the market and use the internet to provide that information. And so we set out to do that, and we were the first financial comparison site in Singapore. And over the years, we basically, that turned out to be successful, and there was a lot of demand for such information. And we thought, actually we can expand this to finance as a vertical. And so we've since expanded into products like credit cards, personal loans, and insurance as well, and bank accounts in recent years.
Yeah. I understand you also shared that you started off this immediately soon after your graduation. You had one business before starting MoneySmart. So what happened to the first business?
So the first business was a real estate search engine, and I think ever since I was in school, I always wanted to start off an internet business. I spent a year working in Silicon Valley, and was inspired by some of the companies that I saw there. And when I came back to Singapore, there was none of this in Singapore. So I thought there was an opportunity to adapt some of the ideas and localize it for the local market. So I started a real estate search engine back in 2007. Then I was still in school. We were all very naive and thought that if you build a good product, people will come. But I had no experience running a business, so a lot of painful learning lessons there. But everything that I learned, I put into this business, and I've been in the second business ever since. Yeah.
And that's actually one of the experiences we also learn from many entrepreneurs, that a failure is not a failure, it's just a learning outcome, and that there's more to learn from it. And I believe also Mr. Vinod has gone through the experience. Okay, so Mr. Vinod, besides starting MoneySmart, we've known that you've grown from strength to strength. You've grown from office at Block 71, and today we're here at office at Commonwealth Drive, and this expanded. And the office actually is huge. Could you tell me what experiences besides expanding office, how was your ability to find talent, people to supplant your growth?
Very challenging. I think as any business owner, finding the right people is a very challenging process. One of my biggest learnings is actually how to hire properly. And one part of it is, we look out for three key things. One's being humble, being hungry, and being smart. That's our core hiring criteria in a nutshell. And we've developed a whole hiring process around that to make sure that we not only bring in people who can do the job, but who also assimilate to the culture that we want to build. Because nobody wants to work with arrogant people, right? You can do the job, but it just doesn't make for a pleasant working environment. So it was something I only discovered fairly later on, when fairly late in the game, maybe only two and a half years ago, after making a lot of hiring mistakes. And I just set myself down to try and focus and figure out how is it I can avoid making this mistake by making the hiring process more robust from the start. So
I think talent management and talent growth are key of forming a company. Besides the hardware of office space, computers, there's also the software that makes up the strength. So could you also share a bit more about other areas of stumbling blocks, the challenges you may face?
Sure.
Or if maybe even some of the successes you also managed to garner?
So another stumbling block, I guess, with most companies is cash flow as well. You can have a big, bold vision, but you need to have the cash to one thing is having the right people, but you also need the cash to be able to hire those people and pay salaries and all that. So that's always a vision, to be able to scale. We're always in a rush to achieve something, but you have to do it in milestones and actually plan it out, plan your growth properly. And for us, we're very fortunate to be able to raise a substantial amount of funding, and of course success builds upon success, right? So you raise a small amount of cash and you prove that you're able to achieve the milestones that you want to achieve. The next round of investors want to finance you further to further see that vision through. And so we've been very fortunate to get some really good investors in our recent round of funding, where we were able to raise $14 million.
Oh, that's great. So that's quite a fair bit of cash to show the growth.
Yeah.
So in this perspective for the growth, where do you see MoneySmart going forward from now? Down to this year's 2000 ending 2017 and go down to 18 and 19. How do you see MoneySmart 2-3 years from today?
Sure. So I think there's, in the Singapore context, there's still a lot of room for growth. If you look at the personal finance market, I think a big segment of the market still uses traditional financial advisors. And one thing that most people don't realize is that financial advisors look after themselves, right? This entire industry is commission driven, right? And distribution of insurance products has been designed in such a way to incentivize the financial advisor, not to incentivize the consumer. And what you end up having is a lot of misadvice and mis-selling, because ultimately the underlying motivator is how much commission I get to earn from this. I can give you a simple example. In the context where you need life insurance, you can be very sure that a financial advisor will advise you to get something that's investment linked, as opposed to a term life insurance. And investment linked policies, while the pitch is very sexy and attractive, little do they tell you that almost half of the premiums you pay go into their pocket. And if you actually scrutinize the statements, you realize that very little of the money that you're putting up every month goes into the investment products. Whereas a term life policy, on the other hand, gives you high protection, low premiums, and hence low commissions, which then is not something somebody will meet you for a couple of hours for to advise you to do. So we're really seeing a shift in how products are distributed, and a decrease in trust as consumers get more and more savvy. They're more confident in doing their own research and their own homework. And we position ourselves as being the go-to place for consumers to do that. So I think there's a lot of work to be done here. So that's going to be a big focus for us. Insurance is one big area that we're going to be driving pretty hard next year. And then coupled with that is also international expansion, right? So we figured out how to make it work in Singapore. The business has grown substantially and has a lot of room for growth, but we also want to be able to replicate this model into other markets. So currently we're in Indonesia and Hong Kong, both of which are very different. So we've got one foot in the emerging market sort of play, which takes a more long-term view to the business, because with a population of 250 million people, you can't ignore a market that big. So while it's in the very early days of evolution, I think at some point the market will turn, and you don't want to go in at the point after it's turned. And then Hong Kong, because it's an affluent market like Singapore, with high levels of consumer education, but low levels of to some extent competition in this space. So we see that as a big opportunity in a market dynamic that we kind of understand based on our experience in Singapore.
That's fantastic vision and growth in this area. And we really wish you well in that direction, Indonesia and Hong Kong.
Thank you.
It will be a great place to take a Singapore brand out into these two markets. Okay, before we leave, one last question. Is there any nuggets of wisdom that you'd like to share with entrepreneurs or startup that you think that it's burning your heart that they should keep when they start their business?
I think something I realized fairly late in my journey, having done this for like 8 years, maybe it's only something I realized in the last 2 years, which has been really transformative, is that it's ultimately all about the people. And if you have a big enough vision, it's not something that you can achieve by yourself, right? So you need to surround yourself with a team of people who buy into that vision and are probably better than you in executing in their various disciplines. And when you are surrounded with a team of A players, then they carry the burden of, I mean, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of mental load to think about marketing and business development. You know, like you're dealing with 101 problems at the same time. And you know, in the early days, of course, when you're trying to prove that the business works, you can multitask and do everything. But after it starts to work, you know, it's very painful because, you know, especially when you spend many years building this up, it becomes your baby. You get very attached to doing everything yourself. But I think for me personally, the moment I learned to let go and started hiring a great team, you know, the results that we've been able to achieve has just been mind-blowing to me. Even I look at it and just am absolutely surprised by what a great team is able to accomplish. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Vinod.
Thanks.
And we also thank our viewers for taking a view in, and we wish you all the best
Thanks.
in your expansion.
Thank you.
Okay, and,
Thanks.
and a very, very prosperous 2018.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.